Good evening. We're here tonight to discuss an issue of great concern. Each year, thousands of Oregon children are getting pregnant and having children themselves. Many teen parents work hard to raise their family and finish school, but the road is so much tougher than it could or should be, and the human and dollar costs for all of us are huge. Join me tonight as we work to reduce teen pregnancy in Oregon.
Good evening, and welcome to a special EdNet telecast, Teen Pregnancy Reduction. Communities talk with Governor Barbara Roberts.
Young people, they really don't think before they do things. So it's like, if they think this is right at the right time, they just think that, it's okay to do this. See, they don't really have, I guess their parents are not talking to them about sex because they're afraid of what they're going to do. I mean, it's better to let them know that, sex is okay, but only if you're ready to take the responsibility of getting a girl pregnant or catching the disease. I mean, there it is there.
You never know what's out there, and that she should definitely check up on her partner's sexual history, and see if he or she could possibly have something, and just to be safe and make sure that she's safe and that she is protected from anything that she could get.
Whether the guy is using anything or not, I would tell her she needs to be cautious and use a condom, a female condom, spermicide, anything. You need to even double up on certain types of things, because the things out here today, it's not no joke, You can die from stuff now.
The Oregon benchmark on teen pregnancy shows currently nearly 18 of every 1,000 Oregon teens are getting pregnant. By the year 2000, the benchmark goal is to reduce the rate to 8.
Statistics tell us we have a problem. Clearly, many attitudes and behaviors have changed since most of us were teens. But how do we get there? Tonight we aren't interested in generalizing or labeling or stereotyping. Instead, we want to consider why teens are becoming pregnant. What has changed for today's teens? Joining me for a discussion about this are two frontline workers on this issue, a woman who was a teen when she had her child, and a representative from a school system that is taking on the challenge of reducing teen pregnancy rates. Donna Noonan is the State Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Coordinator. Janine Tebow-Jameson is a school-based health center coordinator at a high school in Multnomah County. Amber Barton was a teen when she gave birth to her daughter, Jordan. Amber works with other teen parents at the North Portland Youth Center and is part of the Teen Parent Advocacy Group. And Jackie Rose is a nurse at Oregon City High School, where they're winning praise for their efforts to reduce teen pregnancy rates. So, Amber, let me pose the first question to you. Why do you think so many teens are getting pregnant?
Well, that's a very complicated question, and I'm sure there are many right answers. But one of the things that we have noticed and focused on in our group in North Portland is the correlation between abuse and teen pregnancy. And right now, 87% of our young moms in our program were sexually abused, and most of them were also physically abused, and that creates problems with self-esteem growing up, and it doesn't really have anything to do with their how accessible birth control was to them, but it's more of whether they had the self-esteem and the ability to say no and protect themselves from STDs and from becoming pregnant. And most people that grew up without the ability to say no all of their lives because of the abusive situations they grew up in could not or would not say no to the boyfriend who was pressuring them to have sex at a very young age, and thereby became pregnant before they were really ready and responsible enough to take care of a child.
Amber, you used a term that we're probably going to hear a lot in initial tonight, and I thought maybe you would describe it for our audience. STD, would you just tell people what that means so everybody in the audience will know?
Sexually transmitted disease?
Thank you. I don't want people hearing phrases and terms they don't know, and that's one that's really important we all understand. Other members of the panel, what's your comment on this issue?
I think Amber raises a very important issue that's not readily looked at when we're looking at teen pregnancy prevention, and that is that of sexual abuse. That it's much more prevalent than we think of among teen parents. A study in Washington State showed 2/3 of the girls had been sexually abused. And in an Oregon study last year showed that 1/3 of the girls in high school in Oregon had been sexually abused. So I think that's a very serious problem that we need to look at.
Are there other issues from the panel as it relates to this concern?
I think the issue that Amber also raised about the peer pressure is a reality also. And I think that one of the other pieces of the peer pressure is that a lot of our young women and young men are dating older men and women and are pressured from that sense too, and certainly looking for the loving and longing that they are lacking maybe in their own personal life, their family life.
I think that's important.
What else from the panel? When you have someone who is still, as a teenager, in maybe violent situations in the home, becoming pregnant is a way to escape that situation, that dysfunctional family, and gives them the hope and the possibility that they can go out and create a better family life and maybe prove to the world that they will be a better parent than their parents were, and it's a step for them to get out of an abusive situation.
Would you help me to understand, in the pieces you've said, I think speak to something we don't talk about very often, but there are lots of families that are not dysfunctional, and we're finding young women in those families also pregnant. Are there issues of young people not knowing who to talk to, or are there other pieces that are there besides the abuse and the issue of self-esteem and other issues that you've just discussed?
I think if for people that have studied any child development, they would agree with you on that point, because teenagers a lot of times are kind of fall prey to the invincibility fable, where they're out there and they haven't had a lot of negative experiences because their parents have been there to cushion the blows in life, and they feel that, okay, I'm becoming independent and this is an activity that I can engage in that will make me an adult, and they don't think that anything is ever going to happen to them. And I know that was true of myself and true of many of the young moms that I've worked with. Most of them said, I just thought that only happened to other people. I never thought it would happen to me. So that does play a big part. They don't realize that there are consequences to actions.
I think the media plays a role in that too, because the media gives messages that about sex to do it, and it's fun, it's exciting, it's sexy, it'll get you a new car, it'll get whatever we might want in life, and at the same time, the programs show no consequences, no sexually transmitted diseases ever result from television sexual experiences, and they also don't show responsibility of using birth control. So then going into that, we have the message of responsibility for those who are sexually active. I don't think kids readily get a message that they should be using birth control, that is very responsible behavior, that we don't reinforce that for our teens.
The issue about the media that you mentioned, we heard that from a number of teenagers when we did the show last week with them. What do you think the impacts of the media, television, press, advertising are in terms of young people? Is it true that it makes them think, well, they're sort of immune, this is just all so that we'll look great sitting on a stool or running in the sand or whatever those ads tell you you're going to do, and it'll all be okay?
I think if we look at how most of us learn, a lot of us learn from visual aids. And one of the things that you do, if you see it on TV or if you see it in the media, then that is sort of your role model. And a lot of us do lack role models in our lives. And certainly the kids at this point, teenagers, adolescents, and even younger school-age kids in the middle schools are looking for those ideal role models. And so they go home and sit probably an average of 3 or 4 hours in front of the TV. And those become their mentors or role models. And I think it does create a little bit of a turmoil.
What about their parents? One of the things young people told us the other day was that, you know, they really would be happy if they could talk to their parents about this, but the parents were uncomfortable, or they were a little uncomfortable themselves, and that they couldn't be straightforward about it with their parents. What do you think about the parental role in this whole issue?
I feel like we need to probably involve the communities, and there's an Ethiopian proverb that says it takes a community to raise one child, and I think that really, in a sense, is very true. And I think parents also need to kind of be appreciated and also acknowledge to the fact that maybe they don't know all the answers. But I spend a lot of hours in a clinical setting talking with youth to try to get them to learn how to talk with their parent, maybe bring the subject up because they know that their parent isn't very comfortable talking about it. So I really think that we as a community also need to do some education with the communities, even at the church level. I've spent some time going in and talking to church youth groups about some of the sexual responsibilities and sexual postponement.
A lot of parents out there really want to talk with their kids about it. Kids are uncomfortable, parents are uncomfortable, everyone's uncomfortable, and so each one tries and the other one puts it off. I'm not exactly sure how we get past that one, but I see that as a real issue.
Some of the students said the other day, and that follows up on that they get some sex education classes in their high school, but they're so nonspecific, at least from their viewpoint, that they don't know how to really deal with the issue. And looking at a person and thinking you can tell if they have a sexually transmitted disease is one of those issues. They said nobody talks about it in that kind of specificity. Now, I don't know if that's true, but that's the way the students were feeling, that it wasn't specific enough to really help them. Have you heard that before?
I think it may vary from each different community. I know in the particular high school that I work in, there's a real effort from the English teachers to the health teachers to the gym teachers and the coaches to really involve as many kids with that educational pattern. And that includes us going into the classroom and doing a visual aid presentation about STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, or HIV infection.
Well, if you just think of the list of things that you've just discussed in this short period of time, needing someone to love, dysfunctional families, alcohol and drug use, the media, not having enough information, not being able to talk to parents or parents to children. Just look at the variety of issues that are encompassed in that. And peer pressure was the other one. I think that was just part of the list that you gave us in this short period of time. I really want to thank you for helping us get started with this first panel and to tell you how much of a difference it's made to get off with that breadth that you have given us as we start off on this discussion tonight. Thank you very much for giving us a picture of the problem we face.
Well, for now, I would take younger girls and guys that's not having sex right now, and I wouldn't scare sex out of them, but show them what could happen if they have sex, possibly unprotected sex. They may get AIDS, or they may have kids, and they may be struggling for a while because they don't have money, they're not financially stable. And I would put condoms around everywhere, you know. I would do it because I wouldn't be saying that it's okay to have sex, but I would say if you're going to have sex, be safe.
Now, we want to spend a few minutes hearing from people across Oregon who are working on promising projects that are making a difference in reducing teen pregnancy. They're by no means the only hopeful programs, but they're a sample of how we can take on this issue. First, we're going to hear from Carolyn Cohen in Grants Pass. She's a member of the local Commission on Children and Families and is a member of a group called RAP, Reduce Adolescent Pregnancy Project. Now, you won't be able to see Carolyn tonight, but you won't want to miss what she has to say to you. Carolyn, tell us what the folks in Josephine County have done.
Hello, I'd like to share about the process that we're initiating to deal with this incredible issue. Last summer, our local RAP agency, which stands for Reduce Adolescent Pregnancy Project, identified 17 factors contributing to teen pregnancy. Those are drug and alcohol abuse, limited parenting skills, lack of education, lack of positive activities, lack of future goals, limited health education, limited sense of male responsibility, lack of supervision, poor communication skills, a few job opportunities, low self-esteem, peer pressure, teen development issues, which include risk-taking, the immortality syndrome, and lack of logical reasoning skills, social acceptance of teen pregnancy, the misperceptions about and availability of ADC benefits, and abuse issues such as sexual, physical, and emotional, as well as the changing family dynamics, including single parents. These factors were then grouped into 5 key topics for discussion. They included drug and alcohol abuse, parenting skills and supervision, teen development issues, education, positive activities, and then, of course, a strategic planning at the end to fill the gaps and overcome the barriers. Realizing the enormity of the issue, last fall, the RAP group initiated a 6-month community dialogue on these issues contributing to teen pregnancies. The dialogue involved community mapping process, which is based on the wellness model. The 1993 legislature wove wellness into the fabric of House Bill 2004, envisioning a wellness-oriented service system that is preventative and integrated in local communities, and focuses on promoting the wellness of Oregon's children. During each meeting, 40 to 50 parents, programs, representatives, teachers, counselors, church leaders, and teens discussed the current resources, barriers, and gaps relating to the topic of the day. The information from all the meetings were compiled and shared at a strategic planning meeting held in March. At that meeting, we celebrated the work already accomplished and the programs already in place. Yet we realized how much work there is still yet to do.
Carolyn, we're going to move on because we're going to hear from Tiffany Palafox and Doug McIntyre and Elaine Sitterson, who are right here in our studio audience, and they're with the Clackamas County Youth Advisory Committee, and they're going to tell us about the work that they've done. Can you do that for our students?
Hi. My name is Doug McIntyre. I'm currently a member of the Clackamas County Youth Advisory Committee. And one of our main tasks is to give a youth's perspective and take on some of the responsibilities of the Clackamas County Commission on Children and Families. One of the ways we communicate with that commission is to send 2 delegates from our own committee to get information such as teen pregnancy and other things to their meetings.
My name is Elaine Sitterson, and I'm a junior at Lake Ridge High School, and I'm one of the delegates of which Doug was speaking of. My goal on the CCF is to give the perspective that's really needed to make sure that the benchmark is successful as well as accepted by the teens of which it affects.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Palafox, and I'm a senior at Canby High School. And I'm the chair for the Youth Advisory Committee, and I sit in the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Task Force, and we are now implemented and joined with RAP, Reduce Adolescence Pregnancy Project, which we are now, our main goal is to have youth be mentors to the younger kids, and we were aiming at ages 9 through 12.
Thank you. And last, we're going to hear from Linda White, who coordinates school-based health centers in Roseburg. Linda, please tell us about the exciting mentoring program you have going on down in your community.
Yes, I'm glad to be with you this evening to let you know what Douglas County has been doing for the last 3 years to take a look at teen pregnancy and try and prevent teen pregnancies in our county. About 3 years ago, we started looking at what it was that we weren't doing in Douglas County. And what we decided was there did not seem to be any programs out there that were saying, we don't think it's okay for you to be sexually active because of the consequences of that behavior. So because of that, as we looked at programs, we looked at a program out of Emory Grady University in Atlanta, Georgia, that was written by Dr. Marion Howard. This program takes senior high teens, and it gives them a 23-hour training course in facilitating sexual decision-making class at the junior high level. We then take these teens into the junior high classroom for 5 weeks for 1 hour each week. During that period of time, they talk about, the first week, they talk about the consequences of being pregnant, and that can, or of being sexually active early. And that can be either a pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, or we do spend a lot of time talking about the emotional consequences of that decision at an early age. The second week when we're in the classroom, we do look at social pressures. And we look at the media, we look at news magazines, we look at magazines, we look at TV, we look at soap operas, we look at records, we look at all of those kinds of things to show kids that they are being influenced, because it's very difficult to make decisions about behavior if you don't realize all of the pressures and where they're coming from. And the third week, when the teens are in the school or in the classroom, they talk about peer pressure and what that really looks like for a kid in high school or for a junior high teen. The senior high teens talk with those junior high kids about the peer pressure. The fourth week that our senior high teens are in the junior high classrooms, educators call this week the assertiveness training week, and basically what the kids call it is teach me how to talk the talk and walk the walk. What we have found out is that kids may want to say no and do want to say no, but they don't know the words to use to keep the friendship and to keep the relationship. So the fourth week is spent on giving the kids the words to use. And then the fifth week is spent on letting those kids actually role play using those words with both the senior high kids and with each other in a peer relationship in the junior highs. This program is taught in sort of a three-part series or a three-way series. They use information from video, from written material, and from a small group discussion that each senior high kid will facilitate group questions for about 5 to 7 junior high kids. And we don't have any formalized studies or results of how this has worked. We've been doing it for the last 3 years in Douglas County, but the response of parents and junior high teens and senior high teens has been very positive for us.
What I would do is just have condoms around everywhere. I mean, because if teens is going to have sex, at least they should have safe sex.
Now we've invited some folks with a lot of experience on working on tough issues to join us tonight to talk about some of the ideas that have emerged. A bit later in the segment, we're going to have a chance to hear from other sites around the state. But first, let me introduce our panel. Diane Walton is the Executive Director of the State Commission on Children and Families. Peggy Tim is State Director of the Volunteer Program at the Department of Human Resources and has worked with the State RAP Group. Allie Snickney, you met before. Dr. Kathy Gaffney is not only our State Health Officer, she is an expert on teen pregnancy. Dr. Gaffney, let me start with you. How can we build on the ideas that have been suggested tonight, and how can we put them into action?
I think the most interesting thing about what we've heard tonight is that there isn't anyone that has an option to say that this problem does not affect them and the community in which they live. And the first thing we need to be sure is that every one of our listeners and every one of the citizens of Oregon is given a choice of participating in some strategy within their community or at the state level to make a difference. Whether it's beginning to see youth as the future tomorrow and making them feel like they're a cherished part of our society, making young families feel supported so that, in fact, they can provide the nurturing that they need to do in order to give their children the idea of becoming good, responsible adults. And I think a theme that's come across several times here, we've touched on a little bit but haven't really discussed a lot, is this whole issue of the male. I mean, teen pregnancy often becomes and revolved around an issue for the girls, and we've lost in much of the discussion where the young man is. And for many young men in our society, I think we've heard it from James related to African Americans, there are not good roles or good options for them to contribute to our society as adults. And for many men, becoming a parent is in fact for them one of their best chances for success. And we need to give them other options and other choices as well so that they can feel fulfilled in their adult role and taking responsibility.
What else? Peggy, Diane?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Kathy commented about communities, and it seems to me that's the probably most important place that we can start at the grassroots level, and that's what the RAP program is based on. Finding what's happening in communities all over Oregon and then trying to motivate and get the folks that live in that community to really recognize that this is a problem in their town too. You could do that a lot of ways, and one of the most important things is to in my view, is to try to find a way to implement an opportunity for parents and children, young kids that we're talking about down in the 4th, 5th, 6th grade now, to really talk about sexuality and what it means. What are the risks out there today? I think the grassroots level is the answer.
I think both Peggy and Kathy touched on it, and I know Allie did earlier today. The bureaucracy, the bureaucratic side of it is the local commissions. You heard from Kathy Garland and Jeff Lukes, Mike Serene. They're all out there working. It's one of the benchmarks that every county is looking at. What are we going to do to make progress on this benchmark? They're all putting the strategies together. They're different across. There are 36 counties. There'll be a wide variety of strategies to deal with this, but there is a focus on it now in every community. And those plans will come to the state at the end of July. They'll get rolled up. The state commission is going to fund the plans that come to them to try to make this happen. So that's the planning side of it. The physical side in the community, the woman in Hood River spoke to the creation of a center, where there's lots of that going on, where people are starting to come together to build with those physical settings, bringing wide, just disparate groups together and putting something together for teen centers or where they can have the parenting classes. I think all of that's real important.
One of the best things that I've heard this evening, and it builds on what the governor was hearing last week in her conversation with kids across Oregon, is that I hear people saying either listen to us as kids or adults saying we want to hear from kids. And I have a great deal of hope when I see kids in the middle of this discussion and hearing what they have to say and being asked to offer solutions, in addition to opinions, being asked to offer solutions. And I think the way we're going to get down this road to help reduce teen pregnancy is to literally incorporate kids into the solution part of this process.
Somebody here tonight brought up hope as something, as an intangible that we have to be able to convey to people so that there is a sense of that tomorrow will be different than today is. And I want to say just in a personal moment that having Barbara Roberts as the governor of Oregon has meant a great deal to the girls of this state. And
You're here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you very much.
I want to
Thank you very much.
I think there's another point that was made related to programs such as mentoring programs. We heard about, in fact, the issue that sometimes you have to do something drastic in our society, like get pregnant, in order for anyone to pay attention and provide any kind of a support system and services. And we need to go back to the idea, the data is very simple. I mean, being an expert on teen pregnancy is nothing more than just understanding human nature. All any young person needs is one caring adult. And there are plenty of people, there are 3 million people in Oregon that can easily become those one caring adults. I serve as a Rotary mentor with a 16-year-old girl from Northeast Portland. I have to tell you that she gives me so much more than I ever give her. And as you said, I mean, these kids are super, and they really are such an important asset to us. And we all need to step forward and take the risk of listening.
I think we also need to follow the lead of kids in one respect. I think sometimes when we talk about teen pregnancy, we talk about irrational decisions that kids make, but I think in this situation that oftentimes adults are making irrational decisions about the kind of information that we're too embarrassed to give our kids, or the kind of actions we're unwilling to take. We're unwilling to take the heat in our communities sometimes as adults to stand up and say, this is what our kids need for information, this is what our kids need for services in order to deal with the problem of teen pregnancy.
Dr. Gaffney, I'm also a mentor for a 3rd grader. And she's just a little girl and is an absolute delight. And it takes so little of my time to go and spend with her. And yet it means so much to these young kids. I want to go back, Diane, to what you said about hopelessness. So many times young people think that they have no choices. They believe that life is not ever going to be better. They perhaps don't have the role model in their parents or in their community, even among their close friends, to realize that you can finish school, you can get an education, and you can increase your hope for life, and how the choices you make today might forever erase that hope for you. So we need to get that message out to them.
The word I use with young people when I talk to them about the decisions they make, the word self-determination.
Right.
To think about what you do, because that decision may affect the entire rest of your life, whether it's an educational decision, a sexual decision, an abstinence decision, whatever it is. And I think a lot of times young people don't feel like they have much control over their life. And if we can get them to understand they have a great deal of control over their life, but they've got to determine where they want to go and how they want to get there and when they want to get there. And I think the timing is a very important thing. Parenthood is a wonderful thing. I became a parent at 19. I would choose, if I had it to do over, to do it at probably 25. But it was different than a timing that we're seeing with a lot of young kids today at 14. And so I think timing is a part of self-determination.
I think it's real important in giving the message that the governor is talking about, that kids can hear that from other kids their own age, that adults can give that message, but I think it's going to be a lot more effective if it can come from kids who have the experience, teen moms, for instance, to be able to talk with other teens about what's involved in having children, the responsibilities involved in being a parent. I think we saw some of the quotes on the screen from kids who have returned questionnaires to the governor's office. One young woman who's a teen mom talking about the incredible responsibility. So I think if we're going to really reach kids, and the data does show we're going to be a lot more effective if teens can talk to teens, adolescents talk to adolescents, and give some of those messages.
One of the side benefits, I guess, there's a teen program at Churchill for teen parents, and the kids are on campus, and the babies, the toddlers are on campus as well as the high school people, and the kids who aren't the parents see how hard it is, just what an impact it has just through the day, and just those reality checks that, I mean, we're good people and everything, but for their peers and for that reality check, makes a big difference.
But thank you. I think panel, I'm going to stop you now so that we don't get behind time and we can let some other groups have an opportunity. Thank you very much for a great discussion. And was there an idea that came up in your group that hasn't been talked about tonight or reported or came from the panel? And so we're going to let the facilitators see if they can let us know that they've got an idea. And in the meantime, I'm going to get up and walk over to the studio audience and give one of our studio audience people an opportunity to talk about some things that happened here at the studio. Let me start with you, Rick. You want to be first? Can you talk about some of the things we did here at the studio?
Well, one of the things, Governor, that I feel is that a lot of people express a sentiment that is pretty much general among all of us, and that is the need to get actively involved in a lot of these programs that exist to address the issue of teen pregnancies. It's like any other problem that exists in our communities. If we don't participate actively, then we're the ones that are going to pay the consequences. And another thing is to listen to the kids. They have a lot of great things to say if we just shut our mouths and open our ears.
And our hearts.
Yes.
And our hearts.
You can't learn anything by opening your mouth, just by listening.
Let us just turn for just a minute to one of those young people in our studio audience before we go to Elaine County, and let me see if she would like to comment. You talked to us during the discussion in the 30-minute period. Would you like to make a comment for our audience today about what went on here and what you think we need to do?
I would like to see communities, people of all ages, getting together more and working together, because I believe that when young people are integrated into the community with the adults and with teenagers and, of all ages, they feel that's more of an esteem building thing, and they feel more welcomed into the community and look forward more to becoming adults.
Thank you. Well, you got a couple of reports here from the audience at the studio. I'm going to now turn, I think, to Lane County. I think that's correct, okay? To Lane County and see if they would like to tell us about some of the ideas they had in Lane County that might not have been discussed by the panel or others that are reported in.
Governor, it's a pleasure to respond. Can you hear us now?
Sure can.
Great. The one that has not been mentioned that the group felt very strongly about here was having health clinics at middle and high schools for a variety of reasons, particularly to provide easy accessibility to information, as well as creating a safe place for kids to come to take care of their own physical needs. And often they find that abused children are identified at that time and can be treated. That's the one of our four that we identified. We also highlighted building self-esteem through mentoring programs, showing them some hope and opportunities, K through 12 sexual education, mandated and reality-based. And the last was parent education, teaching parents how to talk to kids about these issues.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, let's go to Coos County.
We've evidenced several of the concerns that were reiterated by the group just ahead of us, that we need a mandate from the state education office stating that family life and sexuality education need to begin K and go through 12.
Thank you.
Another one of our big concerns was that meaningful contraception information as well as actual clinic settings need to happen in the schools, which is where teens are.
Okay, and let me see if I can figure out who's next here on the air. We're going to go back to the studio audience for a little while. We're going to get this right. Okay, let me see. Who's got their hand up? Oh, you had some good comments earlier. Would you please share some of those with the audience tonight?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. One of the things that makes me uncomfortable is that I keep hearing a lot of great ideas, and I really do agree 100% with everything that has been said in this evening, but I don't hear anything said about groups that do not speak English. They also share the problems, as a person mentioned them before, which are poverty, violence, all of those things, but the programs do not exist to integrate them into the system and help them participate in whichever programs we have. So I would like to suggest to develop programs that are relevant and meaningful for those communities and people who know how to integrate them into the community so that they can also participate.
Thank you. There was an obstetrician in our audience earlier. I'm going to see if I can get up here and maybe she could make some comments to us that she made earlier to our studio audience.
Thank you, Governor Roberts. I was just concerned that although there are a lot of programs that are very good that step in once a teen is pregnant to give her some support, to make sure she has housing, clothing, and actually sort of make a big fuss over her, that why can't we do this for girls who aren't pregnant? It makes it rewarding to become pregnant. Someone's paying attention to you, treating this young woman as if she's valuable, maybe for the first time in her life. And maybe as a survival skill, becoming pregnant isn't an irrational thing for that young woman to do. And a way of prevention could be to make sure that young women, tiny little girls and young women, have something going to make them feel good so that they don't need to become pregnant to get some attention.
Thank you. That was a very good comment. Thank you very much. Let's see. Someone over here. This woman is a new Oregonian. She came from New York, and I'm going to let her describe to you what she did there and what she said to us earlier.
I'm the former head of the New York City Mayor's Office on Adolescent Pregnancy and Parenting Services. But I'm very concerned about the way people are talking about teenage pregnancy now, and especially the way that there's more and more of a tendency for public officials to blame single mothers and especially young mothers for poverty. And I think this is a terrible mistake in thinking, and it's something that has a very negative results in policy, because in fact, as much of our discussion has reflected, people are often, let's say, giving up their childhood at a very young age because they're very discouraged, they're very depressed, they have no employment prospects. In a sense, poverty in that way is causing teen pregnancy, not the other way around.
Well, I think that's an important issue as well. We're now going to talk to over to Madras, to Dr. George Waldman. Dr. Waldman, can you talk to us over in Madras?
Governor Roberts, I'm George Waldman. I'm a family physician in Madras, and I've been trying to put together an idea to give cash incentives to females in our county, which has the highest dropout and pregnancy rate in the state. This idea has been tried in Ohio and Wisconsin, and more recently New Jersey, to prevent repeat pregnancies among the welfare teen population.
We went to Yamhill County earlier. We're going to go to the neighboring county right now, Polk County. Do you have comments for Polk County and some ideas you had there?
Yes, Governor, this is Polk County. One of the things that we've talked about is the importance of working with boys, not just young men, but boys, that we feel like there are a lot of programs aimed at girls, but boys are equally important in this process. And one of the creative ideas is setting up a sex hotline that would deal with information and with the myths and fantasies that boys, particularly 10 to 14-year-old boys, have. So we'd like to have that considered. Another idea we've talked about is the idea of having a mock computerized infant that kids in high schools need to carry around and have that be a realistic experience of what it's like to be to have a baby. In fact, we're very strong on the whole concept of broad sex education and also mentoring. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go over to the coast to Tillamook County. Could you talk to us about some things discussed in Tillamook?
Good evening, Governor Roberts. This is Al Jesse of Adult and Family Services, and I have a group of 10 people with me. We've formulated some ideas. One which has not yet been discussed is we'd like to see a Teen Moms Speakers Bureau that would speak to teenagers regarding the reality of being a teen mom.
I'm going to ask the panel right now if they have any ideas they might like to respond or any comments they might make about some of these new ideas that have just come through in our outreach to the state.
I'd like to comment on the statement by Dr. Waldman over in Madras, who was talking about a potential program in terms of paying young women not to become pregnant. There are two things about that I think that are important to draw out a little bit. One is some attention being given to young women who aren't pregnant. We've talked earlier this evening about the importance of lavishing attention on young women before they become pregnant. So I think that's a very important idea. The other piece that's built into that program in terms of paying young women that's been used successfully in other places is that in addition to payment, there's also a social structure that's built for these teen young women who come together, that they meet together on a regular basis, and in addition to getting some payment for not being pregnant, what they're really doing is building a social structure so that they have a group of people that they can talk to, trust in, talk about their feelings with, have something in their life, and it helps and has helped to avoid pregnancy because of that social structure that's been built for them.
Medford, could you report in about some ideas you may have had in your discussions?
Clackamas County would like to make a comment.
County and Medford, and we agree with the things that have been brought up previously, but one of the other issues that we wanted to place on the table was that many times we can identify at-risk individuals and families early, and some of our focus and our attention should be targeted to that group to develop services for them and give them better options to prevent becoming a teenage pregnant person. The other thing that we talk about is that we have to make this a priority and we have to develop services, and it's going to take money. And so we need to commit ourselves to that so that we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished.
Thank you. We're going to go now to, I think Clackamas County is next. Could you make some comments for us from Clackamas County?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. One of the issues that came up that we wanted to address was tapping in the rebellious assets of kids. Teens are in a position to establish their own identity, and we've thought to use that as a strength and have the kids confront the media, design teen pregnancy programs, mentor other kids, and use cross-age sharing as a way to get the message out.
Well, that's an interesting idea. That's certainly one we haven't heard. I appreciate that. Anything else from the panel that you might like to comment on as we've listened to a couple of more ideas from out around the state?
We did hear earlier about school health centers, and as you know, Oregon has a network of 19 school health centers now. There is a grant, actually, that we currently are working on to develop additional health centers around the state over the next couple years. We expect that there may be some additional resources in that area. And certainly the benchmark process has left Oregon with the kind of government that makes investments in new things even while we are struggling to find the financing for continuing services by improving efficiencies in other areas. So I think communities should see this as a real opportunity. Also, however, don't wait for money, because much of what we've discussed tonight doesn't cost anything. It simply is people beginning to sit down and say that the next generation of adults who will be supporting us, hopefully, are in fact our most important priority.
Well, and they're saying, I think it came up here and it came up from Clackamas, where it's something that we have to learn again, to listen to the kids. The kids who were here from Clackamas County earlier are, I'm sure, were part of the reason that when the team reported back from Clackamas County that listening to the kids was of high value. Absolutely. They're good at it. They've worked through it. We all need to.
Okay, let me go over here to someone in the audience, our studio audience, who would like to make a comment.
There are two things that I think that are important tonight. One that really affected me very personally or profoundly as I listened to the conversation is the impact of early abuse on later behavior. And I think we need to really step back and think about what as a society we do about that. Certainly there are some proactive things that we need to do to help teach parents how to communicate and bring up their children. In the meantime, I think we can't afford to ignore the children who are in those abusive situations, and we need to provide alternatives. It will take some collective guts to do it, but I think we need to intervene in cases where we've been a little hesitant to intervene in the past. The other thing that has been just amazing about tonight's discussion is that the governor of our state thinks this is such an important issue that she is taking time out and making this a priority. That by itself gives me hope that this will work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to take just a minute before I go to Washington County, and we had an interesting comment earlier from someone who used to be a curriculum director in the Portland School District, and I'm going to ask him to make his comment again for the audience around the state.
Thank you, Governor. We were just saying that the schools is the only agency that gets to deal with all the kids. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get the community to plead with our school leaders, the school board people, the principals, and ask that we have quality sex education, sexuality education, but not only at the high school level, down younger, where the kids are becoming more and more active than was the case so many years ago. More sex education in the schools.
Thank you. And you certainly hit on an issue that we all understand, that this is not an issue without controversy. There is some controversy to this issue, but anything that's very important generally has a little controversy. We're going to go to Washington County now. I think they're prepared for a comment.
Yes, hello. I'm Terry Martin. I'm a member of the Commission on Children and Families in Washington County, and we'd like to emphasize the importance of accessibility to reproductive health care for all teens, including teens who are not in school. We think it's very important that they feel that they have a safe place to go, and that includes confidentiality, of course. We do respect the role of parents in the decision process for teens, but we also feel it's very important to encourage teens to come for reproductive health care and information. And we are also concerned about funding streams for these kinds of clinics or centers, because confidentiality issues and parental insurance is probably not a good source of funding for some girls who need reproductive health care. We also want to emphasize that other groups have talked about the importance of peer mentoring. We're very interested in having teens involved in designing the programs, the education curricula in schools, and also the reproductive health care programs.
Multnomah County would like to comment.
Which county is this? Multnomah County. Well,
Multnomah County would like to comment.
Okay, Multnomah County. Go ahead.
Hello, Governor Roberts. This is the Portland State University Work Group in Multnomah County, and one of the things that we noticed was that the female side of this equation on teenage pregnancy is pretty well covered, but the male side is rather affected by comparison. And we thought it was a good idea to bring up some alternative role models in the media, and Mr. A.C. Green leapt to mind as a celibate basketball player as a positive role model to say that not every guy is doing it. And we also thought, this might sound quaint, but that for myself personally, when I was in the Navy and not too long ago, the sexually transmitted disease shock video worked fairly effectively at getting me to use condoms. And I think it would work if we took some of the mystery out of sexuality for men and for the ladies in high school. And they would know what's involved in a pelvic exam, how to get birth control, and the guys could learn the exact consequences of not using a condom, and if they prevented a few births that way, that would be great too. Thank you.
Great. We appreciate the message from Multnomah County. We've now done Washington County and Multnomah County, two of our most populated counties. We want to take a reach out here to one of our more rural counties.
This is Curry County.
Good. We missed you earlier. Let's do Curry County, clear down in the southern coast.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Floyd. I'm the director of the Health Department and also chair our Health Subcommittee of the Children and Families Commission. And we have two comments. One is that we would like to stress that we feel that the potential for school nursing services has not been discussed enough. Kathy Gaffney did mention school health centers, but we feel that school nurses have a tremendous potential to help individual children as well as groups of children, also can be a resource to parents and to staff from grades K through 12. We would also like to promote that there should be a statewide media campaign supporting abstinence.
Thank you very much, Curry County. We're going to try once again Harney County over in Eastern Oregon. Have you got a comment for the state?
Okay, great. I guess we're on. We've already reported earlier, maybe want to reinforce the strength in wide community-based activities. We have a strong history of that here, and we think it's very effective. The Commission's been active for many years, and we have a strong group called Harney Partners for Kids and Families. And to make this stuff work, it has to be at all levels throughout the entire community, and that's probably the most general issue or tactic that we're taking here.
Thank you, Harney County. We're now going to go and see if we can reach Josephine County that was trying to make a comment. Are you there, Josephine County?
We sure are.
Good.
We shared a lot of the opinions that have been shared tonight, but a few things we noticed that were different. One, we were very concerned about communication in the community itself, the media, in families, and peer communication. And realized that in all three of those, which are so important, that the schools form a common bond, a common link. That community-based schools are becoming increasingly important in our rural areas where schools are often the only community institution. Also, in these rural communities like Josephine County, you'll find that young people have very little in the way of positive activities. There's very little to do. The nice thing about that is in communities like our own where people have very diverging opinions, in fact, in some ways rather polarized politically, we can all agree on the need for positive activities. It's something we can work on together and discover just how effective we can be as a community working cooperatively. Thanks.
I've got someone here from the studio audience who wants to make a comment. I'm going to give them an opportunity to do that. Would you like to comment?
Yes, I'm with the National Abortion and Reproductive Rights Action League, and that issue I don't think has been addressed at all tonight. I think we certainly don't look at abortion simply as a way to prevent teen pregnancy. I don't want people to get that impression, but it is something that I think people do need to recognize as an option of reproductive health care for young girls. But one issue that hasn't been addressed I just want to bring up is that putting barriers to young women, particularly that of parental notification, can create a real problem. We've heard many things about violence, that many girls get pregnant that come from abusive situations. And putting a barrier such as parental notification in front of them creates a real risk to them. Many of these girls then are afraid to talk to their parents about the issues of their being pregnant, and that will just further the violence. So I think that's something that we need to understand, that we cannot put barriers to women to any of their choices.
Thank you. I've got a gentleman over here who commented during our discussion period who would like to do that again.
Yes, Governor Roberts, one of the things that we've talked on briefly is the issue of the media. And, you know, we often wouldn't hesitate to look at ourselves in terms of what we eat and how that affects our body, our health and well-being. But I shudder to think if we continue to allow our media representation in terms of what goes on cable, some of the other, what I consider just really vulgar type of programming, and not have a balanced representation for our young people, then we're going to get what we're going to get what our young people are seeing. And essentially, when they see things that don't offer the sort of balance in terms of relationships, positive kinds of things, then it really creates a problem. For example, when you talk about constructive programs, teams and companies that is put on by Planned Parenthood, they go into the schools and they do a fine job of representing that particular issue. I dare say we don't see enough of that on TV. We don't see our young people involved to the extent in terms of solving this problem in the media context.
Having seen the teens and program that you just described, wouldn't it be nice to see that on television once a week?
Well, and Governor, let me just say that when we start talking about rap music and we start talking about the many X-rated programs on TV, I dare say I'm not a person that's for censorship and that kind of thing. I'm not a holy roller or whatever. But I got to tell you, what we intake into our minds and to our bodies and to our spirit is what we become. And unless we do something about that, I know people think of it as such a large problem and it has so many areas of controversy, but we have to address that in a forthright way if we're going to make any progress on this issue.
Thank you. I sometimes feel like I don't have the stomach to watch television on Friday or Saturday night. It's so violent, and that's what our young people are watching too. Well, those are the kind of questions that Oregonians are asking. And tonight, Oregonians across our state came together to find ways to reduce teen pregnancy. Your involvement in your communities is critical to meeting our goal of cutting the rate of teen pregnancy in half by the year 2000. Just last week, I heard from more than 2,000 teens from nearly 100 schools across Oregon. They shared their candid opinions about why teens get pregnant and how we can change that. In the coming weeks, Allie Stickney will be traveling to places all over communities all across the state to hear from even more Oregonians. And on June 28th, I'm planning to have an exciting forum to the whole state to talk about this issue. We'll spend the day developing concrete steps to tackle specific issues involved in teen pregnancy. And we'll get to hear from U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Donna Shalala, who will deliver the luncheon keynote via satellite and then take our questions at the national level. This is an exciting opportunity for all of us to come together and make a better future for our children and their children. I want to thank all of you who participated tonight and look forward to working with you in the days and months ahead. Thank you very much, and good night.